So we are the grilled cheese family, and today we are talking about my origin story. Basically, what my childhood was like, what relationships were like, and what made me into who I am today, and how we found each other, and kind of the morals and background that made me who I am. For starters, I was born in Chicago, Illinois. I don't know if you knew that or not,
I
but
didn't.
we quickly moved over to Indiana right after, and I was born to my mother and my father, like everybody. But I make a distinction between mother and mom, and the reason for that is I don't really consider my birth mom my mother, or I don't really consider her a mom. So I refer to her as my mother because she's the one that birthed me, but she wasn't really the most influential mom factor in my life.
Right.
So my parents got a divorce when I was 1 years old. So I don't really remember a whole lot of my parents in relationship. All I've ever known of them is one house, two house. So my dad fought really hard to get custody of me, and it was a big issue for my dad because my mom kept on giving problems, taking my dad to court for no apparent reason. And it was a big old struggle for him to get custody of me. And I do remember having visitations with my mother from a childhood, going over on the weekends and spending the weeks with my dad. And then slowly but surely over time, it became a once every other weekend, once a month, maybe two times a month here. Then, things progressed on to where, right around the age of 7, my mom and my dad got married. And around that time, it really started to dwindle down to where it was rare for her to show up. So my mom, which is my dad's current wife, she is the one that I really consider to be the mother figure in my life because my mother wasn't there.
Right.
Right around the age of 7, my parents started dating, and right before I turned 8, they got married. It was a very quick marriage. They went from dating to married really quick. But this was also their third marriage, each of them. So they were
Right.
both married individual times. Now, as far as siblings go, I have a lot, and it's a big old jumbled mess. Um, I have two. It goes oldest sister, brother, next oldest sister, me, and then my youngest sister. Now, my oldest sister is my dad's daughter,
Okay.
different mom, so she's half. And then my brother, my brother, he's technically my stepbrother. So my mom brought in two children to the relationship,
Okay.
my brother and my older sister. Now, my mother, the one that I don't associate with, is had another child as well with a different man. So she's my half sister. And right around the age of 10, my parents adopted her and got custody or guardianship of her right around the age of 10. So she came into our lives at that point. But from the time my parents got married, it was an interesting thing, blending two families. I thought it was super cool to have an older brother and sister. And I remember right before they got married, they sat down with us and they had asked us, okay, we're going to let you guys choose what to call us.
Right.
But from this point on, this is what you will call us. So you got to make a choice now. This way, there's not, you're not my real mom,
Right.
or, you're not my real dad, or whatever. Not to say that that didn't happen anyway, but nevertheless, we had that conversation, and I did choose to call my mom mom. And my older sister and my older brother chose to call my dad by his name just because they had dads in their lives. And they were a little bit older too, so they had already formed their connection with their parents.
Right.
And it just didn't connect with them like it did me.
You said you're how old then?
I was fixing to turn 8 when they got married. So when we had this conversation, I was probably about 7 years old.
Okay.
So, nevertheless, we had that conversation. I'm calling her mom, and they're calling my dad by his name, which is Tom. And so it was Mom and Tom. for my parents, and then, or sorry, for my older siblings, it was mom and Tom, and then for me, it was mom and dad. So we merged households, and shortly after they got married, my brother was old enough. He's 10 years older than me. So, I think I was about the age of 9 when he moved out and went on his own. Actually, he'd moved back with his dad for a little while. Nevertheless, this ain't his story. This is my story. So, nevertheless, he did that. So it went from me being the youngest to me being still the youngest for a little bit. Then they adopted my youngest sister. So I went from being the youngest to the middle child. And if anybody's the middle child spot stinks. It's the worst. You're not old enough to have the responsibilities, but you're also not the baby either,
Right.
and getting coddled and whatnot. So you're kind of in this weird limbo. So as far as relationships go, that was a unique situation to be thrown into as a kid, and now coming into the grilled cheese family like we are, I have a little bit of understanding of those challenges of my older sister getting upset with me that I was calling mom mommy or something, or mama or whatever it was. You can't call her mama, that's my mama.
Oh.
So like, you could call her mom, but not mama, that's my mama. So there was some sibling rivalry there, and nowadays we're closer than what any blood relationship siblings are, and I'm really thankful for that. But growing up, we were also raised in church, and relationship wise, it very much so was the hierarchy of the church, God, man, woman, children. And seeing that growing up was an interesting thing, because it was taught, and having it taught and seeing it put into practice is two completely different things. It's a lot more challenging to actually make that work,
Right.
especially with independent people that have gone through other relationships that didn't work out. It's tough to maintain that, especially for my mom, that submissiveness. And submission sounds like a terrible word, but just that, putting the man above you, as far as how the household works and leadership and whatnot. So it was a little bit of a challenge for that. And another thing was my dad was a truck driver. So he was gone quite a bit. Now, he wasn't over the road, but he would work very long hours. A lot of times till after I had already gone to bed, he's coming in. So
That's
it's
tough.
just a hardworking guy, and I appreciate him so much for teaching me that work ethic,
Right.
and that strength. And despite it not being what you want to do, it's what you have to do. So as far as relationships, I think that translated quite a bit to how I am as a man, and that hierarchy, I still respect that as well. Now, going from child to adolescence and whatnot, I didn't really understand what to expect from a woman. We talked about in your breakdown, which if you haven't seen that, I'll leave a card up above here for you to check out her origin story. In that video, we talked about just men are taught how to treat women, but not what to expect from women, and vice versa. Women are taught what to expect from a man, but not how to treat a man.
Right.
So I was never verbally taught what to expect from a woman. Now, I did see my mom, and especially since being an adult, I can look back and see that those acts of service, those cares, those things that a good woman will do, and I just didn't see it as a kid growing up through the child's eyes. I had to grow up and become an adult to see that through adult eyes. So nevertheless, when I started looking for a relationship, I just wanted a wife, somebody that I can, have kids with and grow old with, because I've seen the old couples in church that have been together for 20, 30 years. I've seen the white picket fence at houses. I wanted that part of a relationship, having somebody, some loyalty, things like that. But I didn't know what I wanted out of the woman itself.
Gotcha.
So I kind of jumped into a relationship pretty quickly. I met a girl that I went worked with. Prior to that, I had, a couple of just offshoot girlfriends, nothing super serious. But I met her at work and we began a relationship. Now, from the time we started dating to we started dating, 2 months later we were engaged, and then 5 months after that we were married.
Wow.
So from the time we started dating officially to the time we were married was 7 months.
That's quick.
It was very quick. So again, I put that on to me being a child at the time, because when we got married I was 20. I still wasn't even old enough to go to a bar yet.
Just a baby.
Nowadays it was different laws back then, but I couldn't even have a cigarette nowadays if we were to get married at that time. So it's kind of crazy to think about that happened all that quick, but surprisingly we had made it 10 years. We had kids. We had Lucas and Adeline. So if you see the grilled cheese family welcome video, we've seen Lucas, Adeline, and Tommy. Now Tommy is your kid,
Yes.
and Lucas and Adeline are mine.
Right.
So we had those, and she's still very much so a part of their lives. And we went through the relationship, and again, I still didn't know what being a man was, not only what to expect out of a woman or your partner. I didn't know who I was as a man yet, what it meant to be a leader, what it meant to be a strong role model, what it meant to be a hard worker. I lied, I had the hard worker part down. But, it wasn't until about 25, 26 years old that I had realized that. So now we're 6 years into a marriage. The foundation of a marriage is built on expectation of me being a boy. That child mindset, not necessarily kid, but child. Not really ready to be a leader yet. So around 6 years into the relationship, we had already had both kids. I was an over-the-road truck driver, just like my dad, and I was starting to come into that role of ready to be a leader. And I tried to implement that into the relationship. And because the foundation of that relationship wasn't based on that, it was based on the child, it didn't work out. So when I was starting to try to implement these things, here we're going to do a budget as far as our spending, these are the places that is a good idea to go. Here's where it's not a good idea to go for safety reasons, and just being a leader and taking charge and wearing the pants and that wasn't accepted. Because that's not what the foundation was on. So I would say right around that time, maybe a little bit later, is where things started to go off the rails in that relationship, because it just wasn't founded in the right spot. So moving on from that, we go through and get a divorce, and we have split custody with the kids and all that fun stuff. After we got a divorce and after we had separated, we hadn't really got divorced yet, I took some time to reflect on where I failed the relationship, and it's not necessarily casting blame on the other person. As we're talking about leadership, that's not something that a leader does. A leader doesn't say, oh, it was the bottom man's fault, that's why the whole company's going to crap. And that's why what I do when I relate to relationships as companies. You have a CEO, you have managers, you have employees underneath that, and then you have board of advisors as well. So other men in my corner that I can call and talk to about certain situations. My dad happens to be one of them. Right. I have a handful of friends that I can call for individual situations that I know that their advice is good advice. I took the time to analyze where I failed. A big thing was being an over-the-road truck driver and not being able to put in the physical time into the relationship. Also, leading from miles away is really difficult too.
Right.
So I could say what I'd like to see done or where I want to take the family and whatnot, but implementing that would be the responsibility of, my ex at that point.
Right.
Staying at home, being at home all the time, it was her job to do that. In other areas as well, I probably didn't give as much attention as I should have to certain details of the relationship. And I took a lot of time to analyze, what I wanted out of a new relationship, where I went wrong in this one. And I found, specifically actually after meeting you, that some things that are a negative in one situation are the biggest positives in another.
Right.
That leadership, that manliness, that type of thing in that relationship was frowned on. We don't need that. We don't want that. And where I'm bringing that to our relationship, it's, yes, I need that leadership. I want that leadership. I want you to show me where I need to go. I need your help with these things. I can't do it on my own. And that feels so good as a man to be able to be relied on for those things. And my job is to make sure that I don't let those expectations fall flat. I need to live up to those things. Going through my childhood and being raised how I was raised, I had heard of how to do that, but I didn't see how to do it like in practice. So I'm hoping that through time, through experience, through learning things like this, that I can be the man that I need to be for my family, and I want to do that. So leadership is a big burden, honestly. It really is. And it's not something to be taken lightly. No. I'm in charge of securing the safety of this household. I'm in charge of making sure we're on a path to success and we're not failing. And so many other things, being a good husband, being a good dad, and being a good leader. And those are big burdens to bear, but if I don't do it, who's going to?
Right.
So I want to take that and be a good man with that. And that's what I was looking for when I was looking for a new partner. I was looking for somebody to let me be the man that I was designed to be, and take that role seriously and appreciate the role as a man and that responsibility, that burden. And hopefully, as we progress through our relationship and stuff, that we can see that you could see that weight being passed to me, so you don't have to worry about it. And it makes your life a little bit easier. And I'm built for that. Yeah. That's what I'm built for, is to be that leader. So we'll see how it goes through time. But that's my backstory. That's my origin story of how I grew up, how I was raised, relationships, all that. And that's what we're bringing into our relationship. And I think in the next video, we will talk about how we actually met and some of the things that stood out to us and made us choose one another. And but that's going to be it for this one. And if you haven't checked out her story, go check it out. It's really important that we see our origins in order to see where we're going.
Right.
I think Gavin DeGraw said, a part of where I'm going is knowing where I'm coming from.
Yes.
So it was in that song, and I think that's really important to know people's backstory a little bit, to see the path to the success.
I agree.
So, all right, if you want to like, comment, and subscribe, let us know what you think about our videos here. We're divulging our lives as deeply as we can, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys too. If you're making a grilled cheese family of your own, if you come from a grilled cheese family, I hope that you can resonate with our story and maybe put it to use in yours. And we're just getting started on this adventure, so we're going to need some help too. So we might ask you guys some questions about, this is the situation that we're dealing with. How would you handle this situation? And I hope to see you guys out in the comments section and giving us advice, and we'll give some back. All right. Bye. I love you.
I love you.
Bye.
Rosie, lay down. She wants to be on film too. She said, I'm part of this grilled cheese fam too. She's the butter. Mayo.
All right. Go in now.
Good girl.
Good girl, Rosie. Oh, what was this fucking lyric? What was this lyric?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't want to be anything other than a prisoner God's son. I think Gavin DeGraw said it. He said, oh my God, am I really blanking twice?